Every gardener dreams of black gold, that perfect crumbly compost that transforms a garden into a flourishing oasis. But imagine spending months meticulously collecting organic waste, only to end up with a foul-smelling toxic sludge that kills your plants. Sounds like a nightmare, right? It happens more often than you think. And the culprit, more often than not, is a few fatal mistakes. Today, we're going to break down 5 things you absolutely must not add to your compost if you want to avoid ruining your entire batch of fertilizer. Trust me, some items on this list might surprise you. Let's quickly recap what compost actually is. At its core, it's a controlled decomposition process. Billions of microorganisms, worms and fungi work as a team to transform your kitchen scraps and garden waste into nutrient-rich humus. The key to success is balance. A balance of greens, nitrogen-rich materials, and browns, carbon-rich materials. Upset that balance and the entire system collapses. That's precisely why proper composting begins not with what to add, but with what not to. All right, let's start with enemy number 1. This particular ingredient can transform your compost pile from a fertilizer factory into a real biological wasteland. I'm talking about meat, fish, dairy products, and any fats or oils. You might be thinking, what's the big deal? It's organic too. But the problem here is multifaceted. First, there's the smell. Leftover cutlets, fish bones, or spoiled cheese decompose very differently than grass clippings or apple cores. They produce a sharp, nauseating stench of decay. And that smell acts like a neon sign for all the unwelcome guests in the neighbourhood screaming free dinner. Rats, mice, stray cats, and dogs. They'll all flock to this feast. These animals won't just drag your compost all over your yard. They can also carry very unpleasant diseases. Believe me, dealing with a rodent infestation is far more challenging than simply keeping bones out of your compost bin. Secondly, there's the world of microbes. Invisible but incredibly insidious. Proper composting relies on aerobic bacteria, which need oxygen to thrive. Meat, and especially fats, create dense, airless, putrefying clumps within your pile. In such an environment, anaerobic bacteria take over. These are the ones responsible for that distinctive hydrogen sulfide smell, like rotten eggs. But the smell is only half the battle. Anaerobic decomposition produces toxins and can become a breeding ground for dangerous pathogens, such as Salmonella or E. coli. The temperature in a typical backyard compost pile is rarely high and stable enough to reliably destroy all that nastiness. Then, unwittingly, you might spread this fertilizer onto your strawberry patch or herb garden. The consequences for your health could be dire. And a special note on fats and oils. Butter, the vegetable oil you used for your salad, grease from the frying pan. All of it is an absolute taboo. Fat coats other organic waste like a waterproof film, cutting off air and moisture access for beneficial microorganisms. As a result, the composting process either slows down significantly or stops entirely, turning your pile into a slimy, greasy, and foul-smelling mess. So remember, once and for all, no bones, meat scraps, fish, cheese, yogurts, grease, or oils. This is the surest way to ruin everything from the very beginning. Moving on to the second item on our essential do not list for gardeners. This is arguably the most insidious trap, precisely because it masquerades as common sense. We're talking about diseased plants. On the surface, it seems perfectly logical. You've removed tomato blight from your beds, or cut off cucumber leaves covered in powdery mildew. What do you do with them? Into the compost pile, of course. It's organic matter. Let it decompose, right? But it's at this exact moment that you're planting a ticking time bomb for your future harvest. Let's break down why. Your backyard compost pile is not an industrial sterilizer. To reliably destroy fungal spores like phytophthora, rust or scab, as well as pest eggs and bacterial or viral disease pathogens, you need a very high and crucially stable temperature. We're talking about 65 to 70 degrees Celsius, maintained for several days throughout the entire volume of the pile. Achieving such conditions in a typical home compost setup is virtually impossible. Your compost might heat up in the centre, but the edges often remain cool. So what happens? Fungal spores are incredibly resilient. They can remain viable for years. When they enter your compost pile, they don't die. On the contrary, they find themselves in a comfortable, moist environment, quietly biding their time. Essentially, you're not disposing of diseased plants. You're preserving the infection for next season. Picture this. A year passes. Your compost has matured. It looks dark and crumbly. You, with a sense of accomplishment, spread this black gold over your garden beds, nourishing young tomatoes, cucumbers, and potatoes. But, along with the nutrients, you're scattering millions of invisible spores throughout your entire garden. And as soon as the conditions are right, warm, humid weather, the disease will flare up with renewed, even greater vigour. You will have, with your own hands, infected your garden. So remember this, any plant showing signs of disease, be it spots, mould, rot, or wilting, must never go into your compost pile. The only reliable way to dispose of such organic matter is to burn it or bag it up and send it off your property in the trash. Next up, the third forbidden ingredient is a true saboteur in your garden. It might look innocent, but its ultimate goal is a complete takeover of your space. I'm talking about weeds, but not just any weeds. Specifically, I mean their two most dangerous varieties, weeds that have gone to seed and those with tenacious, creeping roots. Let's face it, weeding is tough work, and when you pull up yet another dandelion with its fluffy white head, or a whole clump of stubborn quackgrass, it's tempting to toss all of it into the compost bin. It'll just break down, you might think. And that's where the big mistake lies. You're not eliminating the enemy. You're creating the perfect incubator for it. First, the seeds. A single dandelion that has already gone to seed can carry hundreds of those little parachute seeds. The same goes for lamb's quarters, chickweed, thistle, and countless others. Nature designed these seeds for survival in the harshest conditions. They can lie dormant in the soil for years, just waiting for their moment. And your warm, moist, nutrient-rich compost pile isn't a grave for them. It's a 5-star hotel. They won't simply rot away. They'll wait until you spread that finished compost onto your beds, then happily sprout, turning your well-tended garden into an overgrown field. Even more dangerous, however, are weeds with creeping rhizomes. Think quackgrass, field bindweed, ground elder, or horsetail. These guys are incredibly tough to eradicate. Even a tiny, centimetre-long piece of quackgrass or bindweed root can give rise to an entirely new, vigorous plant. And once again, the compost pile provides the perfect environment for their regeneration. You meticulously sifted the soil, pulled out every root, tossed them into the compost, and thought you'd won. But in reality, you've just given them a well-deserved break. In that warmth and moisture, these root fragments will quickly put out new shoots. And next year, when you spread that enriched soil, you'll be single-handedly seeding your garden with an army of these unkillable invaders. Fighting them off will be 10 times harder. So what's the solution? Weeds without seeds and without aggressive roots are perfectly fine for your compost pile. But these persistent troublemakers need to be either dried out in the sun until they're brittle and crumbly, and only then added to the pile, or, even more reliably, simply removed from your property altogether. Don't create unnecessary work for yourself down the line. Now let's move on to our fourth point, a topic that often sparks debate, but on which experts are surprisingly united. This concerns our beloved pets. We adore our cats and dogs, but their waste has absolutely no place in your garden compost pile. I know what some of you might be thinking. Wait, isn't manure excellent fertiliser? How are dog deposits any different from cow dung? The difference is fundamental, and it lies in their diet and physiology. Cows, horses, rabbits. These are all herbivores. Their manure is essentially fermented plant matter. Cats and dogs, however, are carnivores and omnivores. Their digestive systems are different, and their waste can contain parasites and pathogens that are extremely dangerous to humans. Let's get more specific. Cat feces, for instance, can contain Toxoplasma oocysts, the parasite responsible for toxoplasmosis. This disease is especially dangerous for pregnant women, as it can cause serious harm to the fetus. The waste from both dogs and cats can harbour worm eggs, such as Ascaris and Toxocara. These eggs are incredibly resilient to the environment. They won't be killed by freezing temperatures or by drying out. And as we've already mentioned, the temperature in a typical backyard compost pile is almost never hot enough to destroy them. Ultimately, you risk creating not a fertiliser, but a biological hazard. Imagine you're fertilising a bed of leafy greens, radishes or strawberries with this compost, produce often eaten raw or with minimal processing. The pathogens and parasite eggs get transferred from the soil to the produce, and from there, directly to your dinner table. The risk of contracting serious illnesses simply isn't worth the perceived benefit you might gain. Therefore, the rule here is ironclad and non-negotiable. Carnivorous pet waste should be disposed of in only one way, bagged and in the trash bin. Your health and the health of your family are far more important. And finally, for the fifth and last point on our list, we're talking about the silent saboteurs, materials that sneak into your compost disguised as harmless waste, but actually poison it from within. These include coal ash, along with glossy paper and coloured cardboard. Let's start with ash. Many gardeners hold the belief that ash is a valuable potassium and phosphorus fertiliser. And that's true, but with one critically important clarification. Only wood ash, specifically from burning clean, untreated wood, branches and grass, is truly beneficial. On the other hand, ash from coal, charcoal briquettes, like those for barbecues, or treated particle board, is essentially poison for your garden. The issue is, this type of ash contains far more than just beneficial elements. It's a concentrate of heavy metals like lead, cadmium and arsenic, as well as sulfur compounds. These substances don't break down or disappear during the composting process. They accumulate. First, they accumulate in your compost, then in the soil where you eventually spread it. From the soil, they migrate into plant roots and eventually into the fruits and vegetables that end up on your dinner table. Essentially, by fertilising your garden beds with such compost, you are slowly but surely poisoning your soil and your future harvest. Now, let's talk about paper. Paper, you might think, is just cellulose, an ideal brown material to balance your compost. And again, that's true, but only for certain kinds of paper. Plain newspapers, unbleached paper towels, and cardboard toilet paper rolls are all perfectly suitable. But when it comes to glossy magazines, advertising flyers, colourful catalogues, and bright cardboard packaging, the situation changes dramatically. The shine on glossy paper isn't magic. It's a special coating, often containing kaolin, plastic, and various chemical binders. Bright inks, particularly in older publications, can contain those same heavy metals. All this chemical cocktail is absolutely useless to beneficial microbes and earthworms alike. These substances either don't break down at all, turning into microplastics and polluting your compost, or they release toxins as they slowly degrade. Therefore, before tossing another pizza box, which by the way is often grease-soaked, or a glossy magazine into your composter, pause and consider. Your goal is to create a vibrant, nutrient-rich fertiliser, not a dumping ground for household chemicals. And now, let's get to the most crucial point. The biggest mistake in composting isn't just a foul smell or a few weeds, it's the deceptive illusion of benefit. You could be doing everything right for months, but just one wrong ingredient can turn your precious black gold into a devastating Trojan horse. Imagine this. You lovingly spread your finished compost around your cucumber plants, completely unaware that you're simultaneously introducing fungal disease spores that you unknowingly added to the pile last year. Or perhaps you're enriching your strawberry beds with compost, where harmful microorganisms from your pet's waste have already taken root. With your own hands, you're inadvertently creating a vicious cycle of diseases and problems in your garden. all while believing you're doing something beneficial. This is the true, insidious horror of improper composting. It's not an immediate catastrophe, it's a ticking time bomb. So, let's summarise. No meat, dairy, or fats. No diseased plants. No weeds with seeds. No carnivorous pet waste. And no coal ash or glossy paper. By keeping these 5 don'ts in mind, you'll protect your compost, your harvest, and your health. Thank you for watching this video all the way through. If you found it helpful, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more gardening tips. Now, a question for you. What composting mistakes have you encountered? Or perhaps you know of another forbidden ingredient I didn't mention. Share your experience in the comments below and let's learn together.